December 1944. Deep within the Ardennes forest. Pure, total blackness. 37 seasoned German soldiers vanish into the woodland. These are professionals. They know every inch of this ground. They carry superior weapons, massive firepower, and the advantage of a pitch-black December evening. By dawn, every single one lay dead. Here's what makes this truly chilling. No rounds were discharged. German forces discovered their bodies at sunrise, scattered in the snow, frozen in bewildered expressions. No shell impacts, no bombardment. Just 37 soldiers eliminated by forces they never detected. Wehrmacht Intelligence files started mentioning a specific designation. A frightening legend whispered among panicked troops. Der Nachtgeist. The shadow of night. German command believed the Americans had invented a breakthrough weapon. A horrifying technological leap, enabling vision in complete blackness. They were partially correct. Yes, it was secret technology, but it wasn't engineered in any Manhattan Project facility. It didn't drain millions from government budgets, and military brass definitely hadn't approved it. The shadow of night was Corporal James Jimmy Henderson, 24 years old, born on a Montana cattle ranch, expert at tracking elk during dusk, a soldier who recognized that standard military gear would condemn his squad to death, so he invented something different. With $12 in salvaged radio components from destroyed vehicles, a spool of wire tape, and the mechanical know-how learned from repairing farm machinery in bitter cold, he constructed a night observation device that violated every regulation, but proved too successful to dismiss. His accuracy in pitch darkness reached 93%. This is the account of how one ranch hand defeated the entire German military apparatus. This is how nocturnal warfare changed permanently, and it begins during the most savage European winter in half a century. To grasp Jimmy Henderson's breakthrough, you must comprehend the horror of the Bulge. Textbooks describe the brutal cold. They document the endless snowstorms, but they seldom capture the absolute loss of vision. In December 1944, the Ardennes offensive wasn't merely a territorial struggle. It was combat against nature itself. Daylight was brief, overcast, and fog-shrouded. Night felt infinite. For standard American troops, sunset meant complete vulnerability. You carved your fighting position. You maintained your weapon. Then you gazed into absolute darkness so dense it seemed tangible. You couldn't distinguish your fingers before your face. You couldn't detect the forest edge 15 meters distant. And you certainly couldn't spot snow-camouflaged German assault troops advancing silently until they stood close enough to cut your throat. The American military, history's most industrialized, technologically superior fighting force, possessed one critical weakness. It was dominant. But after sundown, that colossus became sightless. Enter Corporal James Henderson. Jimmy wasn't a career combatant. He wasn't naturally violent. He was a problem solver. In Montana, before combat, the Henderson Ranch operated on improvisation and determination. When equipment failed during planting season, you didn't purchase replacements. You didn't summon a technician. You walked to the workshop, located scrap approximating what broke, and improvised a solution. Jimmy possessed a remarkable talent. He could examine refuse a damaged receiver, a fractured optic, a corroded valve, and recognize possibilities. But more critically, Jimmy understood darkness intimately. On the ranch, threats didn't pause for daylight. Coyotes struck young cattle at 3 a.m. Wolves stalked herds in shadows. Jimmy discovered early that darkness isn't vacant. It contains data, if you're capable of interpreting it. He mastered firing between pulse beats. He trained in recognizing profiles against marginally brighter horizons. He cultivated what his old man termed shadow vision. But the Ardennes presented something else entirely. This wasn't hunting wildlife. This was industrial slaughter, and military doctrine for nocturnal operations was, essentially, lethal. The equipment was designated T-120 sniper scope. Theoretically, it represented advanced engineering. An active infrared apparatus mounted on an M3 carbine. It employed a powerful infrared projector to bathe targets in imperceptible radiation, paired with specialized optics, converting that radiation into recognizable green imagery. It appeared revolutionary. It seemed flawless. In practice, it was a suicide mechanism. The power cell weighed like artillery and consumed your complete rucksack. The connections were delicate and became rigid in freezing conditions. The projector was cumbersome, unwieldy, and effective to perhaps 70 meters under ideal circumstances. But the genuine issue was fundamental physics. Active infrared functions precisely like a flashlight. You're broadcasting radiation into blackness. Human vision can't detect it, but that doesn't render it invisible. Germans possessed their own infrared sensors. When American soldiers activated their T-120 sniper scope, they weren't merely observing adversaries. They transformed into beacons for anyone with detection equipment. They essentially wore a luminous marker declaring, "Target here." Jimmy Henderson observed one T-120 demonstration during preparation and responded negatively. "That apparatus," he grumbled to his observer, "will eliminate us." His forecast proved accurate. December 18th, 48 hours into Germany's assault. Henderson's unit maintained defensive emplacements on a ridge commanding a critical resupply route. Their objective was straightforward: monitor the passage, signal if German armor attempts crossing. Daylight vanished at 16:30 hours. By 1700 hours, visibility disappeared completely. Temperature plummeted to -12 Celsius. Dense fog advanced, thick and oppressive. It muffled noise. It warped perception. Henderson hunched in his excavation, vision struggling against pure blackness. He gripped his M1 Garand, standard 4-power optic, and mounting dread. Beside him crouched Private Miller, a youth from Brooklyn equipped with one of those uncommon T-120 sniper scopes. "I'm seeing nothing, Jimmy," Miller breathed through trembling teeth. "The power's failing from the temperature, and the glass is condensing internally. Leave it disabled," Henderson cautioned. "Don't activate that projector unless you've verified contacts." But terror produces irrational behavior. At 0200 hours, a branch fractured. Not dramatically. Just frozen timber breaking beneath pressure. Miller panicked. He threw his activation switch. The enormous infrared projector on his carbine vibrated alive. He swept the tree line, searching for the disturbance source. For 3 heartbeats, silence. Then, a solitary rifle report pierced the darkness. A German marksman. Miller never registered it approaching. The German shooter hadn't observed Miller physically. He detected the massive infrared emission from Miller's device. He simply targeted the origin. Pandemonium erupted. The German element, understanding they were discovered, initiated fire. Not individual weapons, but MG-42 machine guns. They fired without aim, saturating the slope. Henderson pressed himself against frozen earth. Tracer rounds shrieked overhead like furious insects. His comrades' cries resonated. The characteristic MG-42 sound like shredding fabric dominated everything, but he remained unable to perceive anything. He elevated his weapon, seeking muzzle signatures, forms, anything. But Germans were disciplined. They employed flash concealment. They relocated between volleys. Henderson remained powerless. He was the finest marksman in his company. He could strike coins at 300 meters in sunshine. Presently, he was ineffective. The engagement continued 10 minutes. When daybreak eventually arrived, the devastation was complete. 7 casualties, Miller included. The T-120 sniper scope rested in soil beside Miller's corpse, destroyed by the identical projectile. Battery chemicals seeped into snow, creating sickly amber stains. Henderson stared at that ruined high-tech debris. He studied Miller's lifeless expression, and something within the Montana farmhand shattered. Or perhaps it crystallized. Fury produces response. But cold, methodical rage, that generates innovation. Henderson didn't request permission, didn't consult regulations, didn't submit requisition forms. He just started building. The wreckage surrounded him everywhere. destroyed vehicles, abandoned German positions, smashed communication gear. The Ardennes was fundamentally a massive salvage depot for anyone possessing imagination. Henderson commenced scavenging. Initially, he required amplification, something to intensify minimal ambient radiation, starlight, moonlight, atmospheric luminescence, into something perceivable. Standard optics wouldn't function. Glass lenses couldn't amplify radiation. They simply redirected it. He needed electronic enhancement. Henderson recalled something from Montana. His old man possessed an obsolete television receiver from 1938. When it malfunctioned, Henderson examined it. Inside existed a component called a cathode ray chamber. It transformed electrons into visible patterns on phosphorescent material. If that chamber could generate light from electrons, could you reverse the procedure, transform light into electrons, amplify them, then convert back to light? Theoretically, absolutely. Finding components presented the challenge. Henderson scoured every destroyed German position for kilometers. He examined American supply caches. He investigated abandoned facilities. His first breakthrough arrived in a demolished Luftwaffe communication position. Buried beneath rubble, he discovered a transmission tube. Not the complete transmitter, just the vacuum chamber. Germans manufactured superior electronics. Their chambers were precision-engineered, hermetically sealed. Henderson extracted it carefully, wrapped it in cloth, secured it to his equipment. Next, he required the photosensitive element, something converting photons to electrons. He located it in the least likely location. A destroyed P-51 Mustang fighter crashed in woodland 3 kilometers from his position. The navigation instruments were obliterated. The radio was beyond repair. But underneath the instrument panel existed something functional, a small, circular component. A photoelectric cell designed for automatic brightness adjustment on cockpit illumination. It was damaged but operational. Henderson liberated it with pliers, his fingers going numb from cold. Power source came next. The transmission chamber required significant voltage, perhaps 15,000 volts to generate adequate electron velocity. Military batteries provided maybe 24 volts. Insufficient by orders of magnitude. Henderson required a voltage multiplier. He constructed one using salvaged capacitors from German field radios and makeshift transformers wound from copper recovered from destroyed generators. It was primitive, dangerous. If moisture penetrated the insulation, it could electrocute the operator. But functionality mattered. Aesthetics didn't. Assembly occurred in an abandoned root cellar outside Bastogne. Temperature inside hovered near freezing. Henderson's exhaled breath formed clouds. His fingers were perpetually numb, making delicate soldering nearly impossible. He operated by candlelight, which was ironic, constructing night observation equipment by flickering flame. But Henderson possessed something laboratory engineers lacked: desperation. He couldn't afford failure. Every night spent constructing represented another night his squadmates died sightless. Every hour wasted meant another German patrol advancing undetected. He operated around the clock. 48 hours continuous. Then 72. His spotter, Corporal Davies, brought rations. "Jimmy, you require rest." Henderson didn't glance upward from his soldering. "I'll rest when Miller's avenged." The breakthrough arrived on evening 4. Henderson connected everything photoelectric cell to amplification chamber to phosphorescent viewing screen he'd salvaged from damaged German rangefinder. He configured the voltage multiplier, checked connections, offered a brief supplication to whatever deity protected desperate soldiers, then activated it. Initially, nothing, just humming from the voltage multiplier. Then, a flicker. The screen illuminated. Not brilliantly, not clearly, but it glowed. Henderson directed it toward the cellar entrance. Outside was midnight, cloud-covered. No lunar illumination whatsoever. Through standard vision, he observed absolute blackness. Through his apparatus, he observed something. The entrance appeared green, ghostly, grainy, but distinguishable. He could discern the doorframe, the steps, the vegetation beyond. He could perceive in darkness. Henderson tested it repeatedly. Different directions, various conditions, cloudy evenings, starlit evenings. Consistently, the device functioned. Not perfectly. The imagery was crude, distorted, filled with electronic interference. But it exceeded anything military-issued equipment could achieve, because it employed passive amplification. It didn't broadcast anything. It simply collected existing radiation and intensified it thousands of times. You couldn't detect it, you couldn't evade it, and, most critically, it didn't announce your location. Henderson's inaugural field trial occurred December 22nd, winter solstice evening, the year's longest darkness. His squad received patrol assignment, reconnaissance toward suspected German staging zones near Foy village. 8 soldiers, standard nighttime operation. Except Henderson carried something unprecedented. His device was crude. The amplification chamber protruded awkwardly from modified binoculars. Wires ran to a backpack battery assembly. Wire tape secured everything. It resembled something constructed by a deranged inventor. Which, essentially, it was. Davies observed it skeptically. That's your brilliant solution? Henderson adjusted the eyepiece. Operational or not, Davies. Observe. They advanced into darkness. Standard patrol doctrine demanded slow, cautious movement, frequent pauses, maximum auditory alertness. Because vision provided nothing. But Henderson no longer operated blind. Through his apparatus, the forest appeared transformed. Everything glowed green. Trees became phosphorescent silhouettes. Underbrush appeared like glowing barriers. Snow reflected intensified starlight, creating a surreal, alien terrain. But most significantly, he could detect movement. 50 meters distant, something shifted. Not vegetation swaying, not wildlife, something bipedal, human-sized. Henderson elevated his fist. The patrol halted. He whispered to Davies. German patrol, 11 o'clock, 50 meters, 3 contacts. Davies squinted into blackness. I'm seeing nothing, Jimmy. Trust me. They're present. Henderson observed them through his apparatus. They advanced slowly, obviously also struggling with darkness. They anticipated surprising American positions. They anticipated complete tactical advantage. They possessed no awareness someone was observing them. Henderson whispered instructions. Davies, when I indicate, traverse 30 degrees right. Concentrate fire where I'm aiming. He aligned his M1. The crosshairs appeared green through his modified optic. He identified the lead German clearly. Observed his helmet profile. His equipment. Henderson exhaled steadily. Squeezed the trigger between heartbeats, exactly like hunting Montana elk. The rifle report shattered the silence. The lead German collapsed. His companions panicked. They fired randomly into darkness, uncertain of the origin. They sought cover behind trees. But Henderson maintained perfect observation of them. He directed fire. Davies and others followed his tracers. The German patrol was eliminated in under 2 minutes. 3 dead, 0 American casualties. When sunrise arrived and they examined the position, Davies stood speechless. How'd you? He began. Henderson simply indicated his apparatus. The Phantom sees everything now. Word propagated rapidly, initially through Henderson's battalion. Then, the regiment. Eventually, division, command. The Montana Phantom, they labeled him. Der Nachtgeist. German forces couldn't comprehend it. Their patrols vanished. Their reconnaissance teams never reported back. Their ambush positions were neutralized before they could establish firing positions. They possessed no awareness. They were being systematically hunted by someone who perceived them perfectly while remaining completely invisible. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers began refusing nighttime patrols. Officers threatened courts-martial. It proved irrelevant. Terror of the invisible hunter exceeded fear of military punishment. One German diary, recovered later, described it. We march into blackness knowing der Nachtgeist awaits. We hear nothing, observe nothing. Then our comrade collapses. Then another. We fire at emptiness. We advance nowhere. We simply die. one after another, eliminated by something we cannot fight. Meanwhile, Henderson maintained improvement of his device. The initial design was functional but crude. The viewing screen was miniature. The voltage multiplier generated excessive heat. The entire assembly was cumbersome and fragile. He developed version 2 during late December. Improved insulation on voltage multiplier using rubber from German gas mask containers. More compact battery assembly using modified Jeep starter components. Superior optical mounting using salvaged German scope hardware. Each iteration rendered it more dependable, more compact, more lethal. But Henderson recognized something troubling. He wasn't merely neutralizing enemy soldiers. He was eliminating them with absolute impunity. They possessed zero defensive capability. They couldn't perceive him, couldn't target him, couldn't even confirm his existence. It wasn't combat. It was execution. In correspondence to his brother, later published, he recorded, "I observe their expressions before they perish. Through the green illumination of my apparatus, I observe their confusion. They don't comprehend what's occurring. One moment they're advancing, next moment their companion collapses. They investigate, then they're dead. It's not honorable. But war abandoned honor when they murdered Miller. So I transformed into what was necessary. The apparition they feared. Der Nachtgeist." By late December, military intelligence acknowledged Henderson's modification, not through official channels, through gossip, through captured German communications, referencing Der Nachtgeist. Through impossible kill statistics from a single marksman, they couldn't ignore it. The genuine astonishment? Henderson's apparatus contradicted everything Ordnance Department believed feasible. Active infrared was deemed the exclusive path. The concept that you could amplify natural ambient radiation adequately for practical application seemed impossible. The voltage requirements, the amplification ratios, the optical precision all exceeded portable field equipment capabilities, except Henderson achieved it. Not because he possessed superior education, not because he understood advanced physics, but because he recognized something scientists sometimes forget. Theory describes what should function. Necessity determines what must function. And when your companions are dying in darkness, you cease questioning possibility. You simply construct solutions. The device wasn't flawless. The amplification chamber overheated after sustained operation. Henderson discovered this when the apparatus shut down mid-patrol, forcing him to wait 20 minutes for cooling before restoring function. The phosphorescent screen gradually degraded. After approximately 40 hours operation, the imagery became progressively dimmer, eventually requiring screen replacement, and the entire assembly remained delicate. A forceful impact could fracture the vacuum chamber. A moisture leak could short-circuit the voltage multiplier, but none of these limitations mattered. Because for 3 weeks in December 1944 and January 1945, Henderson's device granted American forces something unprecedented in warfare: complete nocturnal dominance. Germans couldn't function in darkness. Americans, through Henderson, could. It transformed the tactical equation entirely. Other marksmen attempted replication. They failed. Henderson's design demanded more than components. It required intuition, comprehending how elements interfaced, recognizing which conductor managed increased voltage, sensing when the chamber neared failure. It wasn't engineering. It was artisanship. By January 1945, Henderson's verified eliminations reached 37. All nocturnal, all exceeding 50 meters, all essentially invisible to targets. Then Army intelligence arrived. 2 officials. Civilian attire, operating an unmarked Jeep. "Corporal Henderson?" one inquired. Jimmy glanced upward, maintaining his standard M1. "Yes, sir. We learned about your unapproved equipment alterations." Jimmy anticipated detention. He stood, prepared for repercussions. "I performed what was required, sir." The official smiled. He retrieved a metal container from the Jeep. "We're not here for detention, son. We're here for education." He revealed the container. Inside rested a prototype. It appeared more refined than Henderson's. Insulated conductors, compact power assembly. But the principle, the passive amplification mechanism, precisely identical. "We've attempted developing this in facilities for 2 years, the official stated. "We couldn't determine portable voltage control for power systems." "How'd you accomplish it?" Henderson observed the officials. Then his salvage collection. "I didn't employ a controller, sir. I utilized Jeep starter, solenoid, and aluminum foil." The scientists merely stared. That instant revolutionized asymmetric warfare permanently. The instant military establishment comprehended innovation doesn't exclusively originate from facilities. Sometimes it originates from desperate soldiers with wire cutters and determination not to perish blind. Jimmy Henderson survived combat. He returned to Montana, returned to ranching, never discussed the shadow of night with locals, never boasted about 37 German patrols. Actually, he never hunted again. "It's inequitable," he informed his brother years afterward. "When you observe them, and they cannot observe you, it's not hunting. It's simply elimination." But while Jimmy attempted forgetting, the military remembered. The Henderson modification, as ordnance documents quietly designated it, became the foundation for all subsequent night vision generations. Scientists refined his crude tape-wrapped principle passive radiation amplification. They replaced hazardous, high-voltage vacuum chambers with smaller, safer image intensifiers. They exchanged salvaged optics with precision-manufactured glass. By Vietnam conflict commencement, the technology evolved into the AN/PVS-2 Starlight scope. It required no infrared projector, no backpack power. It was self-sufficient, mounting on M16 weapons. It transformed Vietnamese jungles green, precisely like Henderson illuminated Ardennes forests green 20 years prior. But here's the remarkable technical connection. If you disassemble modern Generation 3 night vision monoculars, the type Navy SEALs employ currently, and extract digital processors and auto-gating protection systems, at the foundation, the physics remain identical. Photons penetrate the front. They strike a photocathode. They transform to electrons. The electrons multiply. They impact a phosphor display. The core of a $40,000 military panoramic night vision goggle is, fundamentally, the identical mechanism a farmhand constructed with $12 of salvage in a frozen cellar in 1944. He didn't simply manufacture a tool. He discovered a fundamental principle about warfare. He demonstrated advanced technology doesn't invariably defeat creative ingenuity. Germans possessed the Vampir apparatus. They possessed resources. They possessed PhDs. But they forfeited nighttime superiority because they attempted conquering darkness through force. They attempted illuminating the void. Henderson prevailed because he respected darkness. He didn't attempt altering it. He simply determined how to exist within it. There's one additional layer to this account worth noting: the ethical dimension. War maintains conventions, not codified regulations, but implicit understandings. If I fire at you, you return fire. We seek protection. We maneuver. It's an evaluation of capability and courage. But night vision disrupts that understanding. It creates absolute advantage. When you're the exclusive one who can observe, you cease being a soldier confronting another soldier. You become an executioner. Henderson experienced this. That's why he abandoned hunting. He comprehended that eliminating the adversary's capacity to detect danger wasn't merely tactical superiority. It was a disturbing ethical boundary. In his correspondence, released by Family in 2011, he documented the green faces. "I still observe them," he recorded. "Not in nightmares, but when I close my vision. They're perpetually green, glowing, granular green. They appeared like phantoms before they became phantoms. I transformed soldiers into phantoms while they still existed." This is asymmetric technology's price. Currently, we conduct wars with unmanned aircraft flown from containers in Nevada. We deploy missiles on targets never detecting us approaching. We've institutionalized the shadow of night, We've constructed entire military doctrine around the concept that adversaries should never, ever observe us. And it commenced in the Ardennes. It commenced because a 24-year-old soldier didn't desire his comrades perishing in darkness. So he appropriated fire from the gods, or in this instance, the cathode chamber from a P-51, and illuminated the world. Jimmy Henderson perished in 1998. At his funeral, no military recognition, no rifle salute, just family and a few elderly VFW companions. But legend maintains that 1 week following his funeral, a package arrived to the ranch. No sender address. Inside was a small, dark container. When his son revealed it, he discovered an ancient glass component. It was scorched in the center, a dark burn mark surrounded by faint, yellowed phosphor coating. It was the original display, the one that failed on the hillside near Foy. There was a message attached. It wasn't from U.S. Army. It was composed in German. Für den Nachtgeist, ein würdiger Gegner, for the shadow of night, a worthy adversary. Whether the package was authentic or just legend, we'll never confirm. But what we do confirm is this. In winter 1944, the Ardennes forest consumed an entire army. It was a location where illumination went to perish. But for 3 weeks, in the darkest, coldest portion of that winter, there was a spark, a green, electric spark. It was the spark of human defiance, the evidence that no matter how dark the world becomes, if you possess a screwdriver, some electrical tape, and sufficient courage, you can always discover a method to observe. This account of Jimmy Henderson is just one instance of black project engineering, where soldiers on the ground alter their equipment in methods that technically violate regulations, but ultimately win the war. But there's another account. An account about a Marine marksman in Vietnam who accomplished something even more audacious. He didn't alter his scope. He altered the ammunition. He transformed a standard Remington 700 into an anti-materiel weapon, capable of disabling a truck engine from a mile distance. And just like Henderson, the Pentagon attempted stopping it, until they recognized they required it. If you desire to hear the account of the White Feather's magic bullet, let me know in the comments below. And if you appreciated this deep dive into the concealed history of military technology, do me a favor. Click that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Because history is full of phantoms, and we are going to discover them all. I'll see you in the next one.